When a hypersonic drone crashes in the Arctic, everything changes. If the wrong country reaches that wreckage first, it could ignite a global war. Grant Colson and a small team are sent to retrieve the debris before anyone else does. This is the origin story of Grant Colson and the prequel to the SERA Archives series. The Arctic isn't forgiving, and they find out how little time they have. Black Ice is based on the real experience of the Arctic, and you'll find out at the end of the book. Please enjoy this audiobook edition of Black Ice. Check out links below in the description. Tundra Outpost Media presents Black Ice by Aaron R. Linsdau. Read by the author. Chapter 1. Lapland, Finland, Northern Arctic, 09:15 hours local time. They were driving nearly blind, trusting speed and instinct more than sight. Snow ripped across the landscape as a team of 4 snowmobile riders tore through the ice-covered terrain. They were deep in the Arctic wilderness, far above the Arctic Circle in northern Finland. A ring of trees surrounded them a mile away as they cut across the open space. They'd been on the trail for nearly an hour, heading towards a remote crash site to recover a hypersonic drone lost in the frozen wilderness. They spread out while crossing the lake, a tactical move to minimize risk. Grant had heard plenty of grim stories. Children falling through thin ice, people vanishing beneath the frigid surface. It was safer to spread the load the way Greenlandic dog teams do. "I'm glad they sent you on this one, Grant," Camilla said over the encrypted headset integrated into her helmet. "We'll need your eyes once we're on foot. About 3 clicks left before we ditch the sleds. Satellite shows dense trees and a ravine. Rocky as hell." They all knew the terrain from mission briefings. As they continued across the crystalline expanse, Grant admired the speed and agility of their souped-up, 4-stroke Ski-Doo snowmobiles. They were made for snow, but a frozen lake was another matter. The ice was solid, giving them the confidence to tear across it, but it still felt unnerving. The sheer openness, the sound of runners slicing across frozen nothing. It gnawed at the back of his mind. Above, a cold Arctic sky stretched wide. The rising sun created an eerie pillar of light, framed by brilliant sundogs. It was a clear sign that a fierce storm was coming. They'd expected as much. There were only 4 on the team. Retired Major Camilla Rios led the 3 men she'd handpicked for the mission. She'd personally reviewed their files and signed off on the assignment. They were experienced and reliable. More importantly, they'd worked together before. She trusted them, even out here, in one of the harshest places on Earth. Officially, the job was simple. Reach the drone, extract its data, and figure out why it had gone dark. But Grant had been on too many missions like this to believe it would stay that simple. Jennings held his position on the rear flank of the group. His heavy battle rifle was secured in a long gun scabbard alongside of the sled. It made it accessible, but kept it out of the way while riding. He wasn't talkative, but everyone knew his role. He wasn't there for wolves or deer. It was the 2-footed predators that kept them all on edge. Camilla's voice cut in again. "Rear still clear?" Grant scanned the vast stretch behind them. Nothing but wind-blown snow and the faint shimmer of ice. "No movement," he said. "We're clean so far." Camilla continued. "You think the Russian intercept team could beat us out here?" Ray answered without hesitation. "Not a chance. They'd be half a day behind." They continued crunching through the landscape. Short trees surrounding them swayed back and forth above with an eerie, lifelike motion. The occasional crack of a branch snapping under the weight of ice kept them on edge. "We can't deploy the surveillance drone until we stop," Ray added. "If it malfunctions out here, we'll lose valuable time backtracking." "Copy," Grant replied. "We're still locked onto the beacon," Ray continued. "Drone's transmitting, but I won't know if the onboard systems are intact until we get close." Grant held the rear position, eyes sweeping the Arctic emptiness, trailing them all the way along the northern tree line. They should be completely alone. Yet, given his experience with operators like this, he knew better. Dangers lurked hidden and unseen. Each team member had a rifle secured, their sidearms holstered tightly against their chest or hips, and their cold weather parkas zipped against the frigid air. They were ready, but couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't as alone as it appeared. Chapter 2. Every minute they pushed deeper across the Lapland expanse. The snow fell more heavily and the breeze picked up. At their speed, they couldn't feel the wind directly, but the sideways slant of the snowfall and the way it whipped into their faces told the story well enough. The snow had a strange effect. Sound became muffled, muting the world around them. It made the already stark landscape feel even more silent. Far in the distance, a pair of red deer paused, watching the machines roar past. The animals stood stiff, heads high, not used to this kind of intrusion. As they neared the far shoreline of the frozen lake, the team eased off their throttles. They were riding through northern Finland, high above the Arctic Circle, where conditions turned brutal in minutes. The wind had started to howl. Snow came in harder now, slashing sideways across their face shields. The weather was turning fast. Their landing had been rough. A sudden pressure shift forced the transport to drop them early, far short of their intended insertion point. The storm was coming in fast, and the pilots couldn't risk getting stuck on the ground waiting it out. They'd set down on uneven terrain and offloaded quickly, leaving the team to ride the rest in on sleds. As they reached the edge of the lake, the team throttled down again. Everyone scanned the snow-covered terrain for movement. Anything like tracks, footprints, or anything out of place was on the radar. Grant swept the area with trained eyes. If someone had come through recently, it'd show. But nothing obvious stood out. That didn't mean they were alone. A helicopter drop team could have been inserted nearby. Still, it seemed unlikely. Camilla's voice came over the comms. "Still clear back there?" Grant answered without hesitation. "Nothing moving." The weather was already bad and getting worse. Snowfall, wind, and near zero visibility were on the forecast. Even if someone tried to reach them now, they'd be pinned down for days once the storm hit. That's why they'd come in by sled. A chopper might have sounded good on paper, but it was a gamble they couldn't afford, not in these conditions. Chapter 3. "This is the final stop," Ray quipped, voice muffled through his helmet. "If you're looking for your connecting flight, we'd appreciate it if you disembarked now." Laughter crackled through the helmets. The chatter was brief but welcome. As they rolled up to the tree wall, Grant felt a flicker of unease. There was no clear path through the dense forest. Jagged terrain and rocky ridges made snowmobiling impossible. They'd have to snowshoe the final kilometer to the ravine. Grant pulled off his helmet, the wind immediately cutting into the exposed skin around his eyes. He looked to Camilla, who was already stripping down to her balaclava and gear hood. "This doesn't look great," he said, raising his voice over the wind. "We're going to have to abandon transport, and if something goes sideways in there, it's a long way out on foot." Camilla frowned, eyes scanning the tree line. "You see anything?" He shook his head. "No movement. Nothing obvious." Ray stepped down from his sled, gloves already tapping through the readouts on his portable scanner. Still nothing on RF. No heat blooms, no magnetic drift, just snow and static. Jennings moved to the flank, pulling the long rifle from its scabbard. He dropped to one knee and swept the ridgeline with his scope. The wind was brutal now, flinging snow sideways and obscuring almost everything. "Hard to see anything in this mess," he muttered. "But if someone's out there, they're buried deep or real patient. Looks clear, for now." Camilla gave a single nod. "This is the only way in. No fallback, no second track. We commit, we finish." They began to gear up. Each of them wore heavy expedition parkas. Each was warm enough to stand still for hours in the Arctic wind while working on the drone. But now they shed layers, stuffing insulation into their packs. Snowshoeing under full load would generate heat fast, and sweating was dangerous. As soon as they stopped, any trapped moisture would chill through their base layers. Even with their issued bunny boots, the threat of having wet socks still meant a long, miserable day. Same with their gloves. Each of them ran a 3-layer glove system: liners, insulated mitts, and shells. It gave them dexterity when needed and protection when the wind cut hard. The moment moisture crept in, the cold would follow. Every pack was loaded with hardware. All had field tools, harnesses, sample kits, weapons, and spare batteries. Jennings and Grant both carried compact military avalanche shovels. These folding tools were built for digging through snow, ice, or debris. 2 lightweight emergency shelters were split between them. No one carried comfort tents. These shelters were tough but not invincible. The heavier overnight gear stayed strapped to the sleds. Ray's GPS was already logging their route, but Grant and Camilla had their own units running too. All were redundant and synced. The drop point was locked. If the weather turned worse, they'd need to find their way back without guessing. Grant glanced at the sleds, wind piling snow along their flanks. Drifts were starting to build. They were leaving them behind. Their escape was exposed and vulnerable, but in this weather, no one was flying, no one was following. At least there was that. Chapter 4. Crusts of snow dropped from the spruce branches, shaken loose by wind gusts threading through northern Finland as the team moved through the taiga. The trees swayed in long, creaking arcs, the storm building above with a slow, deep roar in the canopy. Snow continued to fall in a steady, gentle curtain, flattening the landscape and muffling every sound. Animal prints crossed the snow in odd places. Hoof marks crisscrossed the forest, with light tracks threading through the drifts. From the rear, Jennings called out, "There's a surprising amount of animal contact up here. Wouldn't expect it, but maybe the snow's been driving them down. Gonna be hard to spot anything undesirable with caribou wandering around. Sure wish we were on a hunting trip." Grant called back to him, "I'm surprised we're seeing any animals at all. That's weird for this area. Makes me wonder what's pushing them into the open." The temperature hovered well below zero. The crunch and squeak of snowshoes echoed close to the ground. Military-issued bunny boots had a unique crunch and squeak on the dry snow. They looked more suited to the moon than Earth. Rated to -40, they still couldn't stop the slow creep of chill. Even at 20 below, it sank in. With moderate firepower and minimalist survival gear, they moved awkwardly through the snow-choked forest. Weapons and full packs made maneuvering a chore. A severe storm had passed through 3 weeks earlier, leaving the terrain shredded. Fallen spruce and tangled deadfall blanketed the forest floor. Being forced to pick their way through slowed their momentum down. This wasn't a camping trip. They were 600 miles north of the Arctic Circle, near the Russian border. The goal was simple. All they had to do was get in, extract the drone core, and get out. They moved in rotation, each taking turns breaking trail through the deep snow, the lead position switching often. Only Jennings carried a full battle rifle. His FN Scar H with a suppressor and 5 spare mags was the group's heavy hitter. Chambered in 7.62 NATO, the rifle could punch through almost anything short of armor plating. He also carried a Glock 17 and 2 pistol mags. With the added weight of a 9-inch suppressor, the SCAR was a substantial load to carry. Its shots had authority. Jennings had the heaviest load, so he spent most of his time in the back. Camilla and Grant alternated in the middle, swapping out with Ray Navarro whenever he burned out. Even with wide-deck snowshoes, the person in the trail breaker position still sank up to the knees in dry, powdery snow that offered no support. Despite her lighter frame, Camilla Rios, armed with a suppressed HK-416 with a 10.4-inch barrel, sank just as deep with every step. When Navarro pushed back into the lead, followed by Grant with his suppressed Daniel Defense DDM-4V7 slung across his shoulder, Camilla finally had some relief. The two heavier men packed the trail flat enough for her to walk more easily. Jennings dropped to the rear, hauling his load across the now compacted path. She broke the silence. "Colson, you ever think about running your own team again?" He took several crunching steps before replying. Steam from his breath curled around his goggles. "Tried that. Spent more time arguing with clients and one-stars about their terrible plans than doing the job." Camilla rolled her eyes. Her gray balaclava muffled the sound. "Yeah, that sounds about right." They marched on for another half-minute in silence. Navarro, short of breath, called back over his shoulder, "You know, a lot of people would still follow you." Grant let the thought sit. He didn't answer. His mind drifted back to Kodiak team. His unit got hit 2 years ago. They made it out. It was the fallout, blowback, and endless second-guessing from armchair commanders that wore him down. It wasn't the mission that broke him. It was the aftermath. Camilla's voice cut through again, softer this time. "Still, some of us would follow." Grant didn't look up. "That is, if there was actually somewhere we were going," he muttered. "These guys pay well, but the constant backbiting and questioning of every move? Classic administrative hell. Not somewhere I'd want to be. I'd rather be a man of action, honestly." Chapter 5. Behind the team, Jennings trotted along, scanning the tree line. He was silent, burdened by the heaviest load. The pace was steady, but the snow was deep and visibility kept dropping. After a beat, he called out a familiar movie line, "Are we there yet, Mom?" Camilla looked over her shoulder and smirked. She glanced at Colson, who replied, "A couple 100 more yards to the ravine. The drone should be perched right over the edge of it." "Right next to—" Camilla cut herself off, pointing ahead. "Right near that embankment to the river. Things frozen solid." Jennings finally spoke again, slightly winded. "About time." Another 10 minutes passed as they trudged forward. The trees began thinning, and just ahead, they noticed broken branches and smashed trunks. A clear path cut right through the forest. This path definitely shouldn't be there. They all marched forward. In a thin section of snow, they stomped to a stop and stared at the wreckage. The remains of the drone. "Come on, what's up with that?" Jennings asked. It was surprisingly intact. For a hypersonic drone, it should have been shredded into ribbons and scattered like space debris. Ray frowned. "You're right. This isn't exactly where we were told it was supposed to be." Jennings clicked on his comms and dropped into a mock pilot voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be starting our descent shortly. Current conditions on the ground are snow, wind, and a whole lot of nope. Please remain seated until the wreckage comes to a full and complete stop." He kept scanning the horizon as he spoke, the drone momentarily forgotten. Visibility was rough. The driving snow distorted everything, twisting the landscape into a shimmering white maze. Jennings added, "Thanks for flying with us today. And remember, don't come out here unless you're being paid a lot or severely misinformed." Navarro's voice crackled over the comms. "Something's off. My GPS is wandering. I'm standing still, but it says you're drifting farther away. Grant froze. It's not locking? Not even close. Signals bouncing everywhere. Grant scanned the terrain, his voice low. Nothing scrambled GPS like this in a long time. He turned to Camilla. We might have visitors. She raised an eyebrow. You sure? He paused, thinking about the inevitable. Get ready for contact. Get early access to new books, exclusive discounts, and behind-the-scenes intel on the SERA universe and the Grant Colson thrillers. Join my author newsletter using the link in the description or scan the code. Chapter 6. In the silence of the falling snow, everything was eerily still. In the blank, nothing smothering of sound that snow creates, there's a calm that fills the space. Until something breaks it. Seconds later, the deep boom, boom, boom of Jennings' 7.62 rolled in from the tree line. The heavy rifle barked hard, answering a threat none of them could see. Navarro didn't flinch. He stayed over the drone, still working. That's Jennings, he said, voice tight. He's engaging something. I'm almost done. Then it hit. Incoming fire erupted. Dozens of lighter rounds raked the slope from multiple angles. Ray spun, reaching for his rifle, but it was too late. He shouted, staggered, then dropped. Blood spread quickly across the snow. Ray's down, Grant yelled. He's hit bad. Camilla returned fire into the storm. Jennings, report, she shouted. Do you copy? Do you copy? Only static. Then, contact left, 300 yards. A concussion grenade fired off. A moment later, incoming rounds chewed through the air. The rocks shattered around them, stinging their goggles with chips and fragments. Everyone ducked. Ray had his hands inside the drone when he got hit. He couldn't move fast enough. His legs twitched as he bled into the snow beside the drone housing. A couple of rounds punched through the snow and splashed red across the white chassis. They hit the drone, probably blind fire. Then it stopped, like the enemy realized what they were hitting. Grant dove for cover. Damn it, Jennings, where are you? No reply. Rounds kept coming in short bursts from lighter rifles. They tore up the rocks, but nothing struck the drone. Camilla, where are you? Rios, where are you? Grant shouted. He could hear her rifle firing. I can't see shit, she cried over comms. I'm just firing blindly. How are they hitting? I don't think they are, Grant said. I think they've just got volume. Who the hell are they? The radio flared again. Contact left, contact right. We've got company coming in. Jennings's signal cut in, barely audible and shredded with static. Then it dropped completely. Colson braced Navarro's body and dragged him behind a rock. Blood streaked the snow behind them. He keyed the radio again. Jennings, say again. What's your status? Nothing. Just static. He tried again. Still dead air. They were being jammed. Jennings is dark, Camilla said. Could be hit. Could be circling. Grant didn't like either option. Then something caught his eye. A flicker of metal. Blinking lights. Part of the drone, torn free and half buried in snow. Ray groaned. Memory core's open, he rasped. Still active. Grant moved fast. He yanked the blinking component from the drone's side panel and shoved it deep into his pack. It was heavy, the size of a small shoebox. He wedged it between cold weather tools and the steel bracket. It was awkward, but it would hold. Ray wheezed. Make them think it's still sealed. Chapter 7. Grant crawled back to Ray. Blood bubbled at his lips. He was shivering hard now, lungs barely holding on. I miss her, Ray rasped. Should have never taken this job. He gasped, then convulsed. Colson could only crouch behind the rock with him, shielding Ray's body as rounds cracked overhead and slammed into the surrounding boulders. A few clipped the rear stabilizer of the drone, metal pinging off in sharp ricochets. "They're firing blind," Colson muttered. "Idiots'll end up shredding the thing they're probably after." The fire kept coming. Then he saw it, a swirl in the snow. Colson raised his rifle and braced to fire. Then he spotted the figure's outline. Smaller than expected. Not a man, not one of the enemy. It was her. Camilla, Camilla. She waved her arms low, crouched. "Don't shoot. It's me. Don't shoot. It's me." A few heavy rounds cracked past. Enemy fire still swept their position. Jennings was out there somewhere in the storm, burning through mags. But their efforts didn't slow the assault. If he was hitting anything, it wasn't discouraging the attack. Colson turned his eyes from Camilla to Ray. Ray's eyes had stopped blinking, staring now. Blood trickled from his mouth, soaking into the hard lines of his gear. He wasn't breathing anymore. Chapter 8. "Ray's gone," Camilla said flatly. Grant didn't respond. He tore off his chest armor and dropped to his knees. He started CPR, crushing his hands into Navarro's chest and breathing into him. All he got was blood. It poured from Ray's mouth as Grant forced it up from the chest into the airway. He spat, wiped, and kept going. "Grant, stop. You can't do anything for him." He kept pressing down, harder. "He's gone," she said again. Quieter this time. Grant's hands froze mid-compression. The gunfire had stopped. For now. Silence thickened. Snow muted. Heavy. Somewhere out there, something shifted. Maybe a vehicle. Maybe movement behind the trees. It was nothing mechanical, just subtle. Enough to make him stay low and watch the tree line. The radio buzzed with static. Jennings hadn't checked in for minutes. They'd both tried. Whatever was jamming their signal was strong. Even standing just a few feet apart, they were cut off. Rios turned down her audio. Colson's voice through her earpiece started breaking up again. She tapped on the receiver to get it to clear. "Whatever they're using, it's serious power," she said. "They had us cold. We completely walked into a trap. Where the hell is Jennings? I haven't heard his weapon. If we can't hear each other at this range, he might already be gone." "These guys look like they were just spraying," Grant muttered. "But they were focused. They were after the drone." "What the hell would they want with a trashed drone?" "I don't know. Doesn't matter right now. We need to live through this first." "Since we stopped shooting, think they think we're dead?" "Maybe. Or they're flanking." Grant scanned the edges. "We've got decent cover in these rocks. But if they cross the river, they won't hit the drone, but they'll definitely hit us." She exhaled hard, thinking out loud. "We need to get out of here. But how?" Grant looked down at Navarro's body, blood still leaking from his mouth, freezing black into his gear. "I don't know. We're cut off. No snowmobiles. On snowshoes, we're sitting ducks. These guys aren't amateurs. If they've got snowmobiles, they've got a much bigger force than we expected. Either they're firing from the ridge Jennings was patrolling, or they've got more boots in the snow." "I've seen vague movement," she said. "My IR is not picking up much. They must be blind shooting." "This is unreal." Chapter 9. A sharp crack split the air. A rock chipped off in front of her face and struck her cheek. She stumbled back, clutching it. Grant leapt up and fired, raking the ridge with suppressive bursts. The opposing team answered instantly. No muzzle flashes in the whiteout, only rounds slicing through. "Damn," Grant muttered. "They thought we were down. That was a test shot. They almost nailed you." "They know we're alive now," she said, blood running between her fingers. "Now they're just hammering." "How many do you think?" "Probably half a dozen. We can take a few, but they're surrounding us. We're chewing through mags. Sooner or later." Grant tracked another burst of fire through the swirl of snow. Neither side could see the other clearly. "Notice they're not hitting the drone anymore," he said. "Just the rocks around us." "Yeah, looks like they figured it out. They know exactly where we are, but they don't want to risk the package." "They tagged it earlier, probably by accident. But now, this is surgical." She started to speak. "Do you have the core?" A shot cracked. She twisted violently and dropped, screaming. Her hands clutched at her hip. Blood spread fast across her thigh, already darkening her snow gear. "Rios!" Grant dove toward her. She rolled in the snow, her breath hitching, body shaking. Blood fanned out beneath her. Grant snapped off return fire. Multiple muzzles answered from the ridge. He dropped low. Fire came in from at least 3 directions. No safe path out. "Rios, can you hear me?" "I'm hit. This isn't good. I can't feel my leg." He tried to drag her back behind cover. She screamed and vomited from the pain. "Stop! Stop! I can't!" she gasped, but he kept pulling. Her eyes rolled back. He slapped her cheek. "Wake up. Wake up." Chapter 10. Bullets smacked into the rocks. Snow exploded around them. Grant shielded her as fragments tore into the ground. He looked down. Just blood, soaking fast through her pants, pooling in the snow. The leg wasn't moving. If the round hit the artery, she had only minutes left. "My hip's broken," she groaned. "I can't walk. They hit my femoral, or something. I feel a chunk of my hip missing. I'm bleeding out." "Not you two," Grant muttered. He glanced toward the tree line. "Navarro's down. Jennings is still dark. We're getting wiped." Snow began to cover her. Her lips turned blue. She started to shiver, teeth chattering hard. She reached up with a bloodied hand and tapped her chest camera. It was a hardened tactical recorder built for field ops. "You have to get out of here," she said. "You've got the module, right?" "It's in my pack, but I'm not abandoning you." "That's an order," she said through chattering teeth. "I know we're not military, but I'm your commander. You're the brain of this op. I'm the lead. You're the one who gets us out. We're not both getting out of here." Her whole body shuddered. One leg trembled uncontrollably. The other was twisted and useless. Grant kept pressure on the wound, but blood still slipped through. It seeped under his hands and darkened the snow. "I'm not going to make it," she murmured. "My hip's gone." He tried to lift her again. She screamed. Loud, ragged, primal. "Stop! Stop!" She gasped. "I'm done. There's nothing you can do." She reached for him, then pulled back, panic flashing in her eyes. "Don't leave me," her voice cracked. "No, do it. You have to. You got minutes before I bleed out. That's it." Tears slipped down his face. He didn't even feel them. "Just like Navarro," she whispered. "There's no way I'm making it. You're not dying here. You have to go." The wind surged. Snow curled into the rocks. Muzzle flashes flickered in the whiteout. He tried to drag her toward deeper cover. A round snapped through her boot and twisted her foot grotesquely. She screamed again. "Oh my God," she gasped. "Grant, I'm already dead." She looked at him, pain drawn deep into every line of her face. "Tell Jonathan." Her breath hitched. "Just tell him." There was no way out. Not for both of them. Not anymore. Chapter 11. Grant hesitated, just for a beat. Then he grabbed the pack and unslung her suppressed HK-416D. He popped up and dumped the rest of the mag over the ridge. Blind suppressive fire to buy seconds. He dropped low, yanked a fresh mag from her vest, slammed it in, and racked the bolt to chamber the first round. Then he set the rifle across her chest and placed her hand on the grip. "Your last mag," he said. "If they get close, use it." She coughed hard, spitting blood onto the snow. Her jaw clenched. Then, just barely, a grin. "Damn sure," she rasped. "I'll take a few with me." He moved behind her and pushed her tighter under the rock's edge. She gasped in pain, tensed up, but didn't resist. "I know," he said. "I'm sorry." The cover wouldn't save her. Probably nothing would, but it might buy her 10 seconds. One shot, one last decision of her own. He paused for a breath. "If there's a way, I'll come back." Her eyes snapped open. They still showed life and were sharper than before. "No, you won't," she hissed. "You'll complete the mission. Get the hell out." "Now, Colson, that's an order." That broke him. He slung his DDM-4V7, drew his sidearm, and ran. Enemy fire paused for a breath. He bolted into the swirling snow. The river lay 50 feet ahead. It felt like miles. Rounds snapped past. Snow kicked up into his face and scraped against his coat. 30 feet. 20. 10. A shot slammed into his back. Hard, like a hammer. He stumbled forward as pain exploded across his spine. But it didn't punch through. Something in his pack had stopped it. He had no time to think. His boots hit the ice, then nothing. He plunged through into black water. The water roared in his ears, muffled and violent, like the world had swallowed him whole. Chapter 12. The current grabbed him the moment he hit the river. He plunged beneath the surface. The weight of his backpack and rifle dragged him down. The water hit hard, frigid, heavy, fast enough to roll him but not a flood. His chest locked. The first breath was gone before he could catch it. Gunfire echoed behind him, short bursts from Camilla's HK, faint and fading. He couldn't tell how long it lasted. 5 seconds, 10, then nothing. Just the current, just the cold. The surface broke overhead in shifting gray and white. He caught glimpses of the bank as he rolled, shapes in the storm, movement along the tree line. Maybe someone spotted him. Maybe not. No one fired. No one followed. The river curved hard. He let it take him, tumbling with the bend. Ice chunks slammed into his shoulder and thigh. His rifle pulled him sideways. The pack twisted behind him like an anchor. He had seconds, maybe less. He reached for the sling release, popped it, and let the DDM-4V7 go. It sank without resistance. His Glock stayed holstered. He didn't even think about it. The pack was next. He shifted and rolled, fighting to keep it above water. The drone core was inside, jammed between brackets and gear. If he let go now, it was all for nothing. He adjusted his angle and kicked hard, forcing himself up just enough to break the surface. He gasped, choked, kicked again. Stay up, stay moving. Chapter 13. The river dragged him downstream, faster now. The flow was brutal but not unbeatable. He could fight it. For a while. His thoughts blurred. Nonsense loops spun through his head as his body edged toward shutdown. The cold pressed in, tight around his ribs, squeezing the life from his chest. There was a Sami hunting cabin somewhere in the hills, 4 miles inland. Grant had memorized the map before they deployed. He'd seen the draw that emptied into the river, a narrow gash in the slope, probably a seasonal creek. That was his landmark. If he missed it, he'd be lost. If he followed it, it would take him to shelter. The current spun him sideways. Then came the impact. He slammed into a submerged rock, chest first. Pain exploded through his torso, hot and sharp, like lava flooding his ribs. He couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The jolt knocked him sideways. His pack twisted. He slipped under, the unforgiving current trying to take his life. He kicked, thrashed, and broke the surface again. He spotted the draw, a shallow dip in the hillside, barely visible through the thinning snow. That was it, his only chance. He had to get out. Now. His toes scraped the bottom. Rocks. He kicked harder, slammed into a tangle of icy branches, and jammed debris piled along the river's edge. He latched on. Pain blurred his vision as he hauled himself forward, up and over the frozen rubble. His boots stayed on, waterlogged and heavy, but they'd helped keep him alive. Without them, his feet would have gone numb minutes ago. He crawled up the bank. Snow ground into his gear. His lips trembled. Every instinct begged him to lie still. Just stop. Rest. But if he stopped now, he'd never get back up. He'd die here, alone in the snow, and the men who killed his team would never pay. If you like this book, check out The Magellan Deception, a high-stakes Grant Colson thriller where buried secrets resurface and history is lethal. Links in the description or scan the code. Chapter 14. He clawed across the rocky ground. Didn't care about the bumps or scrapes. He was too far gone to feel them, but once sensation returned, he'd be a wreck. Bleeding, bruised, every inch of him was torn up. He had at least one broken rib. Every breath stabbed like a knife. He managed to sit up on a rock, drenched and shaking. Wind sliced through him as he yanked off his shirt and wrung it out. Then the jacket. Everything. He needed to squeeze out every drop of water before it killed him. He slapped the shirt back on. The wet fabric hit like ice. He fought the jacket next. His hands were so numb he couldn't grip the zippers or sleeves. 30 seconds just to get the shirt on. Another 30 for the jacket. That was the worst part. He yanked off his boots, peeled away soaked socks, stripped down, bare in the bitter wind. Didn't matter. If he stayed wet, the cold would gut him like a blade. He crushed the pants in his fists and forced out the water. Then he fought to pull them back on. Frozen limbs, stiff fabric. Every movement a struggle. Only after the pants were on did he wring out the socks. His fingers barely worked, but he squeezed until his hands throbbed. Not just to dry them, to force the blood back in. He shoved the socks on, damp but better than soaked. Then the boots. 2 minutes just to get them laced. Every second screamed. He started talking to himself. Slurred, breathy nonsense. "Hello," he muttered, not even recognizing his own voice. "You'd think I was on a bender. Drank a fifth of Jack or something. Come on, pull it together." He forced himself to stand and started doing jumping jacks. Clapped his arms, anything to get the blood moving. Pain screamed through his hands as circulation kicked back in. It felt like fire under his skin. If the enemy commando team had made their way downriver, they'd hear him for sure. He didn't want to take a bullet in the chest just for making noise. So he packed up quickly and stumbled along the rocks, away from the river. He figured the team knew about the nearby cabins. He'd have to take the risk. Grant pushed as fast as he could, flapping his arms, doing high steps like a crazed gym teacher. His gait was a limp and a shuffle, like a drunken college boy, but it kept him moving. He had to push past the first mile, then the second. His words came out cleaner now. Less slurred, he was gaining control. "Thank God," he whispered. "I'm starting to warm up." His hands and toes still burned, like he'd pressed them to a hot iron. But by the 3rd mile, he moved more fluidly. Less stumbling, the rocks underfoot helped, less snow to leave a trail. After the 4th mile, the sky started to dim. The sun crawled toward the horizon, following the flat arc of the Arctic. He knew he didn't have much time. Chapter 15. Grant's legs spasmed, barely holding him upright as the ground finally leveled. 4 miles of rocks, snow, and wind had wrecked him. His vision swam. His head pounded. Then, through a break in the trees, he spotted it. A sagging, lonely hunting cabin, just like the one marked on the map. Remote, hopefully untouched. The roofline dipped in the middle, warped by years of snowpack. The windows were fogged with ice. The trees nearby smelled faintly of spruce, but the air was mostly still and clean. He approached carefully. The door wasn't locked. Too far out for anyone to bother stealing from it. Still, he knocked and called out. "Hello? Anyone in there?" He didn't want a shotgun to the face. Silence. He circled the cabin and pulled out his headlamp. He clicked it to red mode. The dim beam kept his visibility low as he swept the exterior and windows. No movement. No tracks. Once inside, he thumbed it over to white light and scanned the cabin. No one. Just some supplies. A bit of gear, and the thing he needed most. A sleeping bag. He stepped farther in. The air was cold and stale, laced with the smell of damp wood, old gun oil, and something sour. Maybe a dead mouse tucked in the walls. Dust floated in the beam like mist. The place felt seasonal, used and left behind. The sleeping bag was half folded in the corner, crusted with age, one end duct taped shut. He pulled his Benchmade auto striker, tanto tip with partial serrations, the black oxide coating rubbed down in spots from years of use. He popped the blade, sliced through the tape, and snapped it shut. Done. He had to warm up, but first, the transponder. No one knew where he was. As far as they were concerned, the river had swept him away. He powered up the personal locator beacon and popped the antenna. He held the activation button until the green light blinked. Then he moved 50 yards from the cabin and buried the beacon in the rocks, leaving only the antenna visible and blending into the terrain. Back inside, he stripped off his wet layers again and crawled into the old sleeping bag. For the first time in hours, warmth began to seep in. He nestled deeper, in just his underwear, shivering hard. Just a little rest. Just an hour. He kept the lamp strapped to his head as he stripped down. Later, he dropped it to hang around his neck while he slept. Always ready. Always within reach. He told himself he'd rest for 20 minutes, just long enough to stop the shivering. But the warmth came faster than expected, and exhaustion hit harder than he thought. 1 breath, 2. Then he was out cold. Suddenly he gasped and looked at his watch, a scratched-up marathon TSAR with a black face and a black NATO strap. The tritium tubes on the hands and markers glowed steadily, radioactive and self-powered, never needing light to charge. The glow was as reliable as gravity. "Sleep much, Colson?" he muttered. An hour and a half gone. He'd meant to close his eyes for 20 minutes, max. They would be coming. If they picked up the PLB signal, commandos could already be inbound. If not, they would still be sweeping the area. Cabins like this were too useful to ignore. He forced himself up, fighting every instinct. His primitive brain wanted to stay warm and safe. But it didn't understand bullets. It only knew survival. He yanked his clothes back on, grabbed his pack, and checked his weapon. His Glock 20 was loaded with buffalo bore 10mm rounds, and that gave him confidence. The hard cast lid tore through windshields and car doors like paper. Body armor might stop the near magnum rounds, but the impact still felt like a baseball bat to the chest. Against rifles, it wasn't a fair fight, but it was still a fight. He racked the slide just enough to confirm a round was chambered, popped the mag to check the load. Full. He slapped it back in. Only then did he move outside. He stepped only on stone, leaving no tracks in the snow. He borrowed the hunter's spare jacket. Dry. Not warm, but dry. He checked the PLB, still transmitting. Still buried. He worked his way 100 feet out and crouched behind a ridge of rock with decent cover. 5 minutes passed. 10. 15. Then he saw them. Figures moving in the snow. Lights bobbed between the trees. They were coming. He gripped the Glock and kept it close. He wasn't steady. Not much strength left. In fact, not too much of anything. But if they found him, he'd fight. He might not last long, but he'd make the first one drop. There was no backup and no exit in the open. Just rocks for cover and one bad rib grinding every time he breathed. So he didn't move. Not a twitch. Good camouflage only works if you stay absolutely still. Chapter 16. He saw the figures moving through the lightly blowing snow, weapons at low ready, fingers resting on trigger guards as they advanced toward the hut. There were 4 of them, spread in a shallow V formation. The point man moved with deliberate care, sweeping ahead. The 2 wings fanned wide to cover the flanks. The rear man checked their 6 every few steps. No wasted movement, no chatter. Suppressed SBRs hung close to their chests, short-barreled and blacked out, each with a full-length can that caught faint glints of gray light. He had closed the door and made it look as though no one had been there. He'd jammed the sleeping bag back into the cupboard, doing the best he could to leave no indication anyone had used it. Their cold-weather gear was soaked from the waist down. They had crossed the river, too. Their pants hung stiff and dark with ice. They moved like professionals, trained and equipped, but their tension didn't fit the terrain. Urgency pushed their pace as if they were up against a clock. Grant didn't know why, but it worked to his advantage. He had nowhere to be. They couldn't afford to stay long. The clock was ticking for them as well. Maybe they'd try to take him. There were no mobile phones to triangulate, no drones crossing overhead. He wasn't exactly sure how they'd tracked him. It had taken them a while, but he suspected that after he'd locked the drone, they'd had to fight to get it open. Or maybe they'd left one of their tech guys to deal with that while the rest came hunting. Now they stood in position outside the hut, geared up for winter but dressed in black instead of white. That surprised him. It meant they had the coordinates. They were trained, but not fully prepared for a cold weather search. One of them leaned back and kicked the door open. They all paused, holding position in a tight overwatch formation. No response. One by one, they toggled on their weapon lights. "This place is abandoned," one of them muttered. "If he came this way, it's the only shelter for kilometers. If he made it, could have drowned with all that gear." Then they swept inside. After 20 seconds of searching, they came back out. They were looking for him. They found no tracks. He had been fortunate. He walked over rocks nearly the entire way, and his trail disappeared. After an hour and a half of snowfall, even the best trackers wouldn't have found anything. The wind had done the rest. Not even Grant could see his own tracks now. His PLB was safely buried in a mound of snow, completely invisible, still transmitting through the thin crust along the wall. He heard one of the men speak into a radio. The words weren't clear, but the tone was frustration. They hadn't found him. There was some back and forth, the wind carrying fragments of speech. Most of it vanished in the gusts, but the rhythm and tone were unmistakably English. Sharp Northern European accents. Not local, not unified, a mixed team. Then a voice broke through the static, clearer this time, still English. Peace. The word hung there, strange in context. The accent was buried under interference, but something about the voice tugged at Grant's memory. Familiar. Close, but just out of reach. Get out. We have to leave before dark. If we don't, we'll be trapped out here. They'll show up tomorrow. It sounded less like a field command than a relayed order, probably from whoever was leading their exfiltration. Maybe even the same man who had orchestrated the assault that killed his team. Arguments crackled back and forth. Some grumbled acknowledgement, then silence. Grant realized they didn't have a strong chance of success. These were a slightly different breed of commandos. Maybe it was money. Men without a guaranteed payout if they failed wouldn't want to stay out here long. But they also knew that if they didn't return with their prize, they wouldn't get paid at all. Still, they didn't want to get caught out here either. Not in this cold and snow, not in this wind. Chapter 17. Grant watched as the men swept across the landscape. They moved with precision, checking behind rocks, scanning with rifles, and methodically clearing the location. They had already been ordered to vacate. He knew it. Still, they paused for one final sweep. Their target might have slipped through. One of them raised a thermal scanner, just a compact optic, but even from 100 feet out, Grant caught the faint metallic glint of the lens. That was enough. He buried his face and slid deeper behind the rock, tucking himself into the crevice he had picked earlier. From a distance it looked like nothing. The feature was just another dip in the terrain. The commandos weren't likely to waste time sweeping that far out without a hint of someone hiding. Grant stayed absolutely still. The snow dulled his thermal signature. The cold gnawed at him through the borrowed Sami gloves. But he didn't move. Stillness mattered more than pain. Any movement, any flicker of heat, and he was done. The team advanced in a disciplined sweep, 50 feet out, then pivoting to sweep back again. Controlled. Efficient. They weren't guessing. They were executing the final grid. They made 2 passes, slow and deliberate. On the third, one of them gave a signal. 2 fingers up, then a tap on the wrist. That was it. They regrouped and pulled back, fading into the thickening snow. No hesitation, no chatter, just a quiet, trained withdrawal. Grant stayed put long after they were gone. He waited until the sound of boots vanished, until the wind and snowfall had started to erase the last traces of their movement. Only then did he stir. His body burned, hands shaking. Every joint was stiff. He hadn't moved a muscle, and it had cost him. The cold had settled deep. He wasn't sure what kind of nerve damage he was dealing with, but for now, he was alive. He forced himself back toward the cabin, staying low. Not a full crawl, just steady movement over the rocks. No standing, no light. He moved by breath and starlight alone. The latch on the door was still busted, kicked in earlier, but he wedged it shut as best he could and slipped inside. He hoped the snow had buried what little trail he left. The wind would help. He reset the door the way it had looked before, off-kilter and slightly ajar. The commando's own boot prints were everywhere now, muddying the scene. It would pass at a quick glance. He crawled to the far corner of the cabin, away from the window. He didn't touch the cot. He stayed on the floor, out of sight, shadowed. Only then did he pull the sleeping bag around him. He was warm enough now. Barely. Enough to survive the night. All he could do was wait, pray the PLB was doing its job. They wouldn't attempt to return and try another river crossing in the dark unless someone forced them to. If you like this book, check out The Last Echo. It's a pulse-pounding SERA Archives story that dives into what real survival costs. Links in the description or scan the code. Chapter 18. The rotors came first, low and rhythmic, pulsing through the Arctic silence. Boom, boom, boom. Outside, the storm had passed. Barely. The snow had stopped falling, but clouds still hung like bruises over the horizon. Morning light scattered across the sky, fractured by ice crystals. A sun pillar stood upright in the distance, flanked by faint sundogs. Ghost suns burned into the cold. The weather was shifting, but not gone. Not yet. The little Sami cabin sat half buried in drifts, silent beneath the passing chopper. Inside, Grant lay curled in the corner, locked in a half-sleep that felt more like suspension. Every part of his body ached from being curled tight, protecting himself from the cold and the window, from bullets, from death. He had wedged himself into that shadowed corner and waited for rescue or a final sleep to take him away. He was still waiting when the sound reached him. The thrum of the blades grew louder, closer. It filled his ears, and for a moment, he wasn't sure if it was real. His eyes refused to open. Minutes passed. Then hands, boots, a voice. Onko hen Hirala, one of the masked. A second voice spoke, more cautious now, trying English. Hey, can you hear me? Grant groaned, head lolling as he felt someone checking his shoulder. Fingers pressed into his back. He's still alive, someone said. The second trooper gave him a firmer shake. Grant forced a breath. Yeah, what's going on? You set off your PLB. Looked like you were in rough shape. Yeah, Grant muttered. I definitely am. He tried to move, but his body folded under him. Everything within him collapsed. Darkness rolled back in. Chapter 19. Private Medical Clinic, Finland, 0930 hours local time. The steady thrumming of medical equipment pulsed in rhythmic echoes around the room. The smell of sterility filled the air. Old scrubs, alcohol, iodine, and something acrid like ozone. An institutional weight pressed down from the ceiling panels and fluorescent lights. Out of the corner of his eye, Grant saw cables hanging from an IV rack. A dull light glowed on the far side of the room, like a skylight. His arm was bruised, deep purple and black, and every movement flared with pain. But worse than the physical toll was what had happened to his mind. When he'd first come to, he tried to communicate with his handler team. Nothing. Ghosted. No one responded. No one acknowledged his presence. He checked his account. No money. No deposits. The clinic staff searched the records. No contact. The names he gave turned up nothing. The people he asked them to call were unreachable. Gone. Vanished. The people who'd hired him? The orderly looked them up on his phone. Nothing came up on the web. Search engines turned up nothing, though they'd been online just last week. Cut out. Abandoned. And the worst? Betrayed. Now, lying in the narrow hospital bed, he had nothing but time to think about what came next. He wasn't broke. He had planned better than that. But this wasn't the kind of work where you took time off and picked up another gig. When the people backing you disappear, when your entire operation gets scrubbed from every system, that isn't just a contract gone bad. That is a shadow no one wants to touch. He still had his backpack. None of the medical staff had pilfered it. It sat stuffed in the patient property closet in the corner of the room. No weapons, just a rugged block of hardware with a lifeless LED display. The ISR core. Dead weight now. The drone core had long since gone silent. The battery was dead, but the data was still intact. He had verified that before it shut down, preserving it from voltage loss. Until he got it somewhere secure, he had no idea what to do with it. People were willing to kill for that data. but the company that hired him was gone. No sign they would admit sending his team, let alone losing the core. He still had no idea who the attackers were, or what happened to Rios, though he knew. She was dead. No one survives that level of blood loss. And as for Jennings, Grant assumed the same. They were overwhelmed by a force twice their size. Movement caught his eye. The door opened wider. A tall man stepped in and rapped once on the wood paneling. Wind howled faintly outside the window. The man paused at the threshold. "I'm Justin Draylen," he said. "Used to wear the uniform. Air Force. Retired now." He waited. Grant gave a slight nod. "Come on in. You can sit if you want. I'm not going anywhere." Justin stepped forward, pulled a chair back from the wall, and sat with quiet efficiency. He had a military air. The straight back, measured step, and a calm confidence said it all. His clothing was civilian, but Grant had worked with enough officers to recognize one when he saw it. "Grant Colson?" the man asked. Grant grunted. "Please excuse me if I don't stand. Bit roughed up at the moment." Justin's eyes swept across his face, pausing at the frostbite scars and the hollow, worn look in his eyes. He walked into the room, keeping a respectful distance. Not so close as to be a threat, not so far as to be dismissive. "I'm sorry to tell you this, but I suspect you already know. You've been abandoned. Your friends are dead, and I suspect you have no idea what you actually have with you." Grant's blood went cold. This man knew exactly what was going on. For a second, Grant half expected him to drop the charm. He thought the man might pull a weapon and put 2 rounds in his chest. Then he would casually stroll out of the room with the backpack, no one the wiser until the nurses did their rounds. But the pain was too severe. His body wouldn't respond. Fingers still numb, toes like wood. Even if he wanted to fight back, there was nothing left. "I'm not here to pull a pistol," Justin said, as if reading his mind. "That's not how I roll." Grant chuckled dryly. The guy had the look. "So, definitely military." Justin nodded. "Retired colonel. Did my 30. Ran a few bases. Sat through too many briefings. Stepped out a few years ago. Figured I wasn't ready to go full golf and retirement." He paused, then added, "Now I'm building something new. We think you might be a great addition." The last thing Grant wanted was to go to work for someone again. But money? That was a problem. He'd fronted a lot to help his parents through recent health issues. The pay for this job had been good. Now his options were limited. He was probably blacklisted. He wasn't sure what the offer really was, but he was tempted. Being abandoned had a way of doing that to a guy. "I doubt I'm getting a reference from whoever ghosted me," he muttered. "It's not a forgiving line of work. These people reshuffle the cards, and they always reappear," Justin said, pulling a tablet from his coat. "We've pieced together most of what happened. We found 2 bodies out there. One was a woman, Major Rios, 82nd Airborne, former Army." Grant swallowed. The other took longer to identify. Ray Navarro, private contractor, brief military stint. He had a great ASVAB score and was a technical whiz. "And the third?" Grant asked. Justin paused. "That's where it gets tricky. We didn't find a third body. It's possible Jennings fell in the river like you did. No way to know." He tapped the screen again. "We saw you got into the drone. Same as the other assault team. No surprise we didn't find the ISR core. That telemetry and surveillance data are the kind people die for. You did a good job retrieving it." Grant stewed for a moment. Not good enough after losing 3 people. Justin's eyes drifted toward the patient locker in the corner. Grant tensed. "Relax," Justin said. "Don't worry, I'm not here to take it. Yet. But you're not exactly going to fly from Finland back to the States with that in your luggage without raising a few eyebrows. That said, there are some people upstairs who definitely want what's in that pack. Grant smiled thinly. They can wait in line. Chapter 20. The man stared for a moment, saying nothing. Outside, the wind gusted against the window, rattling the frame. Then stillness. Too still. For a long time, they just looked at each other. Justin finally broke the silence. You look like you got pretty banged up. I was surprised you made it out. We didn't have eyes on the location during the snowstorm, he continued, but based on tracking data and how torn up the area was, that was like a hurricane tearing through a forest. I'm impressed you cut your way out and made it to that cabin. Most people would have died in that room, or just given up on marching. The frostbitten man replied, Yeah, that's not how I'm wired. Justin said, Exactly why I'm here. I've got an opportunity for you. Grant remained silent. Justin took it as a cue to continue. We've got a new agency forming, Strategic Exploration and Recovery Agency. What you just pulled off? That's exactly the kind of work we do. But there's one big difference. We don't leave people behind. It's not some shadowy contract job. This is the government. Legit. We've secured international funding from over a dozen countries. Grant asked, What exactly do you guys do? Sounds like a beautiful cover for some letter agency nonsense. Justin laughed. You're right. We definitely didn't want that. No three-letter agency vibes here. We're not in the spy business, not military recovery, and not out there swinging heavy weapons. He paused, then added, We recover more than just tech. Sometimes it's historical. Artifacts or sites that have real-world impact, not just museum pieces. And yes, there's a humanitarian side too. We step in when things go sideways and nobody else can or will. We protect and recover when we're called to help. But it's always about protecting what matters before it disappears, gets exploited, or causes damage. Grant said, People who shouldn't have that kind of tech don't seem to have any problem disposing of people. You're right again, Justin said. That's the thing. Some of the groups our agents face already have a very bad reputation worldwide. But we're different. With international backing, we aim to do things right. Grant leaned back. So what do you want to accomplish? Justin answered, We've already got countries signed on. There are people in place. What we need now are field operators, leaders, people like you. A few names came up, and yours was on the short list. He paused, letting the offer settle. And for your immediate issue, which I'm guessing will be knocking at your door soon enough, we'll cover your hospital stay. Consider it part of your signing bonus. Grant narrowed his eyes. How did you find my name? Like I said, we have connections. We've checked everyone with deep background research. You're not just a survivor. You're the guy who didn't abandon his post. Grant flinched, feeling the sting. He had abandoned Rios, or had he? Chapter 21. Grant stared at the pack of papers the colonel had left behind. He doubted there was anything classified, nothing that would set off alarms. Still, he opened it and started flipping through. The wind nipped at the window as if it were checking in. Somewhere behind the wall, the building creaked. The radiator ticked. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The same ceiling he had studied for 2 long, silent weeks. No calls, no visitors, no mission, just stillness. He reached into the folder and pulled out the business card Justin had tucked inside. Plain stock, matte finish, raised lettering, Colonel Justin Draylen, Director, Strategic Exploration and Recovery Agency, United States of America. No email, just a number, direct line, old school, analog, intentional. Grant turned the card over. The back showed a seal with a deep navy ring and a gold rope border. A compass rose stabbed over a pale globe. 7 silver stars arched across the design. He counted them. 7. 1 for each continent, maybe. Or just a lucky number. Strategic Exploration and Recovery Agency. He said it under his breath. Covers just about everything, he muttered. He flipped through the papers again. It wasn't about digging up pottery shards or cataloging ruins. It wasn't a kill and depart outfit either. SERA felt different. It looked like it was built for recovery and protection. And it dealt with real history, not just dusty relics or safe house secrets. And they appeared to be lean, unlike the bloated agency machines he knew too well. What surprised him was their public record stance, with published field logs, audits, and ground-up accountability. Unlike some agencies, they claimed they could actually track a paperclip if it went missing. Grant let out a dry breath through his nose and leaned back, feeling the cold light against the window. The Arctic sun dragged a long, slow arc across the sky, throwing thin, creeping shadows across the bed. He watched it move, watched the time stretch and settle. There wasn't another offer coming. There wasn't another mission waiting. Later that afternoon, he pressed the nurse call button. "Would you mind bringing me a phone?" he asked. "I need to make a call." Historical notes from the SERA Archive. Verified material. Mission. Reference file LE095. Hypersonic flight. Hypersonic flight sounds futuristic, but it's already real. Speeds break down like this. Subsonic is slower than the speed of sound. Supersonic is faster than sound, up to about Mach 5. Hypersonic is Mach 5 and beyond. The speed of sound shifts with altitude. At sea level, Mach 1 runs about 767 miles per hour, 1,235 kilometers per hour. At 30,000 feet, where most jets cruise, it drops to roughly 678 miles per hour, 1,091 kilometers per hour. For reference, a Boeing 777 or Airbus A320 cruises near 560 miles per hour, 900 kilometers per hour. The SR-71 Blackbird pushed 2,200 miles per hour, 3,540 kilometers per hour, at Mach 3.2. The X-15 rocket plane peaked at 4,520 miles per hour, 7,274 kilometers per hour. Mach 6.7, skimming the edge of space back in 1967. Modern hypersonic missiles and drones aim for speeds between Mach 5 and Mach 10. That's 3,800 to 7,600 miles per hour, 6,100 to 12,200 kilometers per hour. Through the atmosphere, not space. For a gut check, a 9mm police bullet moves around 820 miles per hour, 1,320 kilometers per hour. A hypersonic drone blows past that, 4 to 8 times faster, and holds it for hundreds of miles without melting. That speed comes at a price. At Mach 5, the skin of a vehicle heats past 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit, 1,000 degrees Celsius, hot enough to weaken steel and vaporize unprotected electronics. At those speeds, even a small shift in airflow can tear a vehicle apart. Plasma fields from superheated air can block signals and blind onboard sensors. The telemetry core Grant Colson recovered? Not fiction. Real-world drones and aircraft carry hardened black box modules built to survive crashes, combat, and catastrophic failure. How do I know? Let's just say I used to work as an electrical engineer in defense systems. Some of the details are still technically classified. The Sami people. Northern Finland, where Grant recovered, lies within Sapmi. It is the traditional homeland of the Sami people. They have lived across Arctic Scandinavia for thousands of years, enduring some of the harshest winters on Earth. Known for reindeer herding, snowcraft, and a rich oral tradition, the Sami are indigenous to the region that now spans parts of Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Russia. Today, they maintain cultural autonomy and land use rights across all four nations. The Sami aren't just part of the landscape, they shaped how to survive it. Their cabins were small, rugged shelters scattered throughout the backcountry. They served for seasonal hunting, herding, or refuge during storms. Built low and insulated with timber or turf, placed along ancient routes, these cabins have saved countless lives. What Grant found wasn't just shelter. It was the last outpost of a survival system refined over centuries. Their knowledge isn't a myth. It is Arctic engineering passed down by blood, by boot print, and by bone-deep instinct. If you like this book, check out The Bone Road, a desert survival thriller rooted in real Silk Road history, betrayal, ancient crypts, and a secret sealed in bronze. Scan the code or hit the link in the description. Author's note: survival isn't fiction. The river scenes in Black Ice aren't movie drama. They're real. While crossing the Greenland tundra, I fell into an icy river during a blizzard and had to strip down to just underwear and a wool shirt to dry off. There was no backup plan. I had to keep moving forward. 5 minutes in that water shredded my strength. My speech slurred. It took minutes just to tie my boots afterward. I had to race nearly 4 miles, 6 kilometers, across the Greenland interior to reach a cabin shown on the map I hoped was there. During that push, worsening storm conditions and thick fog obscured the trail. Along the way, I ran into muskox guarding their young. They made it clear that the trail was theirs and I wasn't getting through. They're built like tanks, and if you get too close, they'll charge. I had to veer way off course to stay alive, almost getting lost in the whiteout. Later in Wyoming, I pushed my limits even further. I crossed a frozen pond, smashing through the ice with screwdrivers as makeshift emergency picks. I wanted to feel what it was like to be trapped in freezing water. The screwdrivers failed to grip, so I hacked across the ice with my elbows. By the time I reached the far side, they were torn open, bloody and bruised. In another cold water test, I crossed the Snake River in sub-zero, minus 19 degrees Celsius, temperatures during a snowstorm. I deliberately triggered the same level of hypothermia I had experienced in Greenland. This time it was a test. I wanted to see what it would take to lose motor control and have my thinking distorted by a falling core temperature. There's video proof if you really want to see how bad it gets. I've had nerve damage in my toes and feet during expeditions across Antarctica, Greenland, and Denali. Even without full frostbite, the nerve damage was real, and it stayed with me for months. Grant Colson's fight for survival isn't exaggerated. It's based on what cold exposure really does. It doesn't just sap your strength. It strips it away faster than you can think. The cold doesn't give second chances. The cold is an enemy you can't shoot. It never sleeps. It never quits. It just waits. Thanks for listening. You've just unlocked the origin file that launches the Grant Colson series and the SERA Archives series. This is part of a much larger world inside the Strategic Exploration and Recovery Agency. If you want to stay close to the mission, hear when the next story drops, or go deeper into the SERA universe, make sure you're on the email list. Visit aaronrlinsdau.com/SERA/black-ice. These stories come from the edge. They're written between expeditions, on long flights, and in the quiet hours when the world isn't watching. Thanks for walking this road with me. Aaron. The Last Echo excerpt. In this exclusive excerpt from the next SERA Archives mission, The Last Echo, Grant Colson and Louise Fontaine uncover a Cold War signal buried on a remote island. What starts as a routine search quickly spirals into a deadly game against the island, the storm, and the past. Trailer from The Last Echo. Wolei Atoll, Western Pacific, 2200 hours, local time. Grant slashed his machete through a thick tangle of vines, clearing a path through the rain-soaked jungle. The damp leather grip slipped under his fingers, sweat and rain making it slick. Crushed leaves and churned-up soil filled the air with their sharp, earthy scent. "Nothing like a midnight hike through a storm to make you appreciate the little things," he muttered. Behind him, Luis picked his way through the mud, his boots squelching with every step. The sticky, rain-churned ground sucked at their feet. "Is this really necessary? Couldn't we just walk in during the day?" Grant simply shook his head, splashing through the midnight mud. He continued hacking his way through the jungle. Would have been nice to drop onto the old Japanese landing strip, World War II vintage, still sitting out there on the atoll, mostly forgotten. "You know we can't," Grant said, sidestepping a slick route. "Your idea, remember? Move at night, stay undetected. Brilliant plan." Luis sighed. "I know, but now I'm having second thoughts." "Too late for that. We're already here," Grant said. "No backing out now." Not every ghost stays quiet. Find out what happens next. Read or listen to the full mission now in The Last Echo, part of the SERA Archives at aaronrlinsdau.com/SERA/the-last-echo. Strategic Exploration and Recovery Agency. SERA is a multinational agency tasked with locating, securing, and protecting knowledge, artifacts, technologies, and sites of historic and strategic significance. It works with global partners across diplomatic, cultural, and scientific channels. The agency operates discreetly, outside the headlines, but not outside the system, to prevent the loss of critical history and to protect discoveries that still carry impact today. These records have been released to promote transparency, preserve historical continuity, and uphold public trust. They are part of an ongoing effort to share the agency's work openly and directly with the public. For additional mission files, tech briefs, and global operations data, visit www.seraops.com. Preserve the past, protect the future. Internal agency use only. About the author. Aaron R. Linsdau is a polar explorer, mountaineer, and author who's crossed Antarctica solo to the South Pole, climbed Denali 5 times, and led a full expedition across the Greenland ice cap. He's survived whiteouts alone, carved his own ice shelters, and once spent a sub-zero night in Yellowstone while wolves slept just outside his tent. His winter routes stretch farther than most people's commutes. Before turning to fiction, he spent 2 decades engineering advanced defense systems, some classified, all high risk. From embedded military tech to field-tested survival, Aaron writes thrillers that carry the weight of real-world experience. He's not imagining what it feels like to be out there. He knows. His stories blend historical mystery, tactical realism, and edge-of-the-map adventure. They're grounded in truth and driven by hard-won experience, the kind that comes from places where mistakes aren't forgiven. Aaron also writes travel romance under the pen name Aaron Belsing at aaronbelsing.com. These stories are for readers who prefer a little seduction with their adventure. You're in capable hands. Learn more at aaronrlinsdau.com. Black Ice was written by Aaron R. Linsdau and read by the author. It was recorded by Sestrugi Press in studio in northern Idaho. Editing, mix, and post-production by Tundra Outpost Media. Associate producer, Timothy Linsdau. This has been a presentation of Tundra Outpost Media. Black Ice is available from the author's website at aaronrlinsdau.com, where you'll find more thrillers in the SERA Archives series and the Grant Colson series. Aaron also writes travel romance under the pen name Aaron Belsing at aaronbelsing.com. These stories are for readers who prefer a little seduction with their adventure. Copyright 2025, Aaron R. Linsdau. Audiobook production, copyright 2026, Tundra Outpost Media.